Non-Brits of Reddit, what thing surprises shocks you most about Great Britain? Your pigeons are like little seaheads, but instead of your wallet they want whatever it is you're eating. How everything changes every time you turn a corner. You could go from a little cobblestone alleyway, turn a corner and everything's modern steel and glass. Turn another corner and there's an old church sitting next to several open-air pubs. It's great. I stumbled upon Chinatown drunk and thought I walked into some weird play. I was mugged at knife point in London, and they couldn't have been more polite. Let's have that wallet then. Frick. Here. Alright then, I'll be taking this cash. Here's your wallet and passport back. Thanks. Cheers, mate. I was offered drugs once walking around London at night. I told him I didn't have any money, so the guy threatened to stab me if I didn't give him my cash. I reminded him that I just told him I didn't have any and he apologized and walked off whistling to himself. Well, I thought that all the English people drinking ridiculous amounts of tea jokes would be an exaggeration, but bloody nope. It's like an addiction for you guys. We drink tea like Americans drink coffee on a bad day. How will ages go out on weekends? Every bar I went into you'd see ages from 1860. Blows my mind. Also, being in the military and having just come back from the UK working with their army, I've learned that you're crazy. Try the pubs up north, mate. You generally get introduced to the bar by your dad at around 16, and for the first few months, as long as your dad is there, you will be served beer. Prove that you are not an and they will serve you anytime. I remember getting around in just after I turned 17. Old John still came out on Friday and sat night for at least 2 or 3 pints. He was 92. I'm always surprised to see how much my British friends know about our American politics. They know more than most Americans. The spectator sees more of the game. How short the general election campaigns seem to be. Like, does campaigning really only last for 2 months or whatever? Compared to America, that just seems lovely. There is also a limit to how much politicians are allowed to spend on their campaigning, so a party can't receive millions from a big company for political favors. I think it's like £250k, but that could be some random number if just plucked out of nowhere. How green the western part of the country is. I never saw such the color green heifer in my life. I live in Louisiana and we have a dark green everywhere, but in West County it was so bright. I think of that countryside often. I went to London in August a few years ago, and it only rained once. I love that the museums are free, unless you want to visit a featured exhibit. We were there during BBC proms and got to see the symphony at Albert Hall for the equivalent of $18, with the choir and 2 visiting opera soloists. They had taken the seats out of the orchestral area and some people paid about $10 to stand or sit on the floor. We took the tube everywhere and it was ridiculously civilized, compared to New York, even during rush hours. Honestly, I never had a bad meal. Even the light lunch at the Tate was delicious, and I'm a picky eater. I was surprised how early alcohol stops being served. We had a small bar in our hotel, and they used to stay open till 2 AM to accommodate the tourists. We met a whole wedding party from Scotland there and had a blast. One of our cabbies was incredibly funny and nice. Took us on a wild goose chase to find an old pub we had read about and helped us find it. I don't know if it's still there, but it boasted the smallest bar in the world, which was actually a separate corner of the bar that was closed off and sat to. It's just outside London and it's called the White Swan on Upper Mall Road. I loved my experiences there and have been back several times. Glad someone mentioned our public subsidy of cultural organizations. It's the same for museums and galleries. Many theaters are heavily subsidized by public funds also in order to keep ticket prices reasonable so that everyone can benefit. It's a pretty small percent of general taxation that yields enormous socio-cultural and economic value. Irish person here. The drinking thing. I spent a night in Dover and it was like 28 days later in the town center. The place was trashed. Girls collapsed and puking all over. Lads hollering and fighting. Cops in riot vans dragging belligerent chavs in. We've like 1 or 2 spots like this in the entire country, yet our reputation is as the drinkers, and your reputation is as tea drinkers, when we drink more per capita and our blends are stronger. It's strange. Reminds me of a quote from The Thick of It. Sorry, there is no way around it. It's horrible. It's a bit like Dover. You know, if you want to go to France, you've got to go through it. Your pigeons are really fat, like chicken size. Also, your squirrels are really adorable. They'd take our food and bury it and comes back. Here, they treat humans like plagues. How the British tabloid is so trashy and always seems to find a way to publish something about the late Diana at least once a month. That's really only the Daily Express, and something about Diana is their go-to news story when it's a slow news day. Some of you actually like Marmite. I thought it was a nationwide joke like Australia and their drop bears. Nope. People put it on toast and crap. Marmite is the crap. You just have to apply it in small amounts. Castles and cathedrals everywhere. Castles and cathedrals in ruins. Castles and cathedrals under repair. Castles and cathedrals restored. It's like whoever lost the battle got left in ruins and their villagers enslaved as reconstruction workers for the victors. French English here. The fact people wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in a sincere tone. In my other country, France, it just never happens. It's just, okay, bye. Strange, then again it's probably because French people don't have souls, just small vials of perfume. You don't all sound posh. It sounds stupid, but I always expected Brits to either sound like the Queen or Tracer. Instead, you sound like normal people. Go to Liverpool and you would realize how wrong you were. Google Scouser accent. How good their Cadbury chocolate is. I'm Canadian and I'm not sure if it's like America's version, which is just Hershey's in a Cadbury wrapper, but dang, Britain's is amazing. And Canada still has buttons in those marvelous creations things too. The way you greet people while entering stores meeting a group of friends. Being asked how I was feeling was odd. I'm good? Wait, am I good? I don't know anymore. It doesn't matter. We rarely actually want to know how anyone is. English girl here who works in a call center that also caters to American customers. The amount of American customers we get who automatically assume we're in London is shocking. Then when they learn we're not in London, they usually assume we're near it. Well, in American terms, no matter where you are in Great Britain, you're near London. Driving across Britain is like driving across a state here, which many people make day trips out of. A thing that actually just confuses me is just what the UK, Great Britain and England mean. I actually had to look up Scotland to see if this story could be included here, but onto something that surprises shocks me. My family is from Scotland, though we immigrated to America back in the 1910s. One time we had our relatives from back in Scotland visiting us. I was only 5 at the time, but I had never seen such pale people before that. I remember being scared of them and my older sister. She was a brat who liked to pick on me, tried to frighten me into believing that they were ghosts. We went to see the beach while they were here. It was like April on Long Island at the time, so the weather might have been warm but the ocean was still freezing. Nevertheless, the visitors from Scotland jumped into the ocean and said it was wonderful, while my family all watched and wondered how they weren't freezing. We all went to some old museum house as well. The tour guide said something like, "This house is actually 250 years old. It's one of the oldest houses in this area. Isn't that amazing?" And our Scottish relatives started laughing. When the tour guide asked why, they said, "Arg, back home we live in a house that's 500 years old, laddie." I don't understand why Americans of all people find this a difficult concept. The United Kingdom is one country, made up of several smaller ones. Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland all united, with a government in common but accents, customs, and some laws differing, just like you guys. That your trains are ridiculously expensive, while being even worse than ours, Norway. That you can't handle a few centimeters of snow, even though you get snowfall every year. School's out, shops are closed, but girls still wear mini skirts when clubbing. That Cadbury caramel is not a part of everyone's daily diet. That crap is irresistible. Americans who don't know what I'm talking about, your version is made by Hershey's and tastes like crap. Fresh groceries are so cheap at great quality. Spray deodorant everywhere. How incredibly awesome your curse words are, and the fashion is so much daring and extravagant than ours. I don't get why our countries are supposed to hate each other. Yeah, football and Napoleon yada yada. You don't like eye contact. Flew in the country. Picked up my bags. And on the subway out of the airport. Looking around subway. Lady walks up to me. Is there a problem? Nah, that's just the tube. Most of the UK isn't like that. As far as I'm aware, us northerners even do such horrific things as start up random conversations with strangers on occasion. Native Brit here, but I wanted to tell a story about when I worked in retail with several local and some Polish girls. One day, during a conversation about TV, one of the Polish girls said that she saw a ridiculous daytime comedy about a fat woman and how her house is flower wallpaper, flower furniture and flower everything. In an instant, 3 of us said, "Keeping Up Appearances." I can remember her saying, "What a stupid show. I'm glad it's made up," followed by a shocked reaction that there is a Mrs. Bucket type person in real life that we all knew. Sorry, it's pronounced bouquet. LOL. I love that show. Poor Richard. He's a son. I've spent a year now living in the UK working on an MA. What I found surprising is just how class conscious people are. In America, I'd say people are generally much more focused on race, which unfortunately often corresponds with social class in some areas. Here, I have friends from both rich and poor backgrounds, and both sides are very aware of where they stand in the social hierarchy. They readily define certain activities that are appropriate or not for someone of their respective standing to take part in. My friend, who self-describes as a peasant, for example, also gets angry when hearing a posh accent because in his opinion people sounding like that have been keeping people that sound like him poor for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Perhaps I'm living in some bubble of class tension, or maybe this is a more general trend. IDK, but this has been the biggest adjustment since arriving here. Makes me think of the scene in Kingsman when Eggsy is whining about people born with silver spoons up their asses, and how he could be just as successful if he was as fortunate. Went to Scotland with my family a few years ago. Opened up the newspaper to a random page and there was a big old pair of teeth just staring back at me. Slammed that newspaper down so fast. It was probably page 3. How incredible all your dairy and dairy products are. Seriously, one of the most disappointing things about coming back to the States is the fricking milk. I miss the cheese, chocolate, tea, and milk from Great Britain. People don't talk to strangers. We are driving through a little town. I went across a 1-lane bridge and of course blew out my tire on the curb. It must have taken an hour to get the luggage out of the car, set up the jack, replace the tire. During that time 20 people must have walked past us. No one said hi. No one made a funny comment about the flat tire. Nobody said anything. They just looked straight ahead and walked past us. It was like Night of the Living Dead. In the US you would get wisecracks, empathy, maybe a helping hand, something. It was odd. Come up north. Everyone will help you and start a bit of banter, although it may be an incoherent dialect for you. Because of PBS was expecting a mashup of Red Dwarf, Fawlty Towers, Downton Abbey, Are You Being Served, Sherlock, Doctor Who and Teletubbies. Not disappointed. I hope to frick you didn't see a Teletubbies. How your police force works. Seriously, every cop in Britain deserves a medal. They take down violent people using no guns. No guns. That's the kind of crap superheroes do. My boyfriend is German and visited for a few weeks this summer. When he walked into Tesco for the first time, he was like a child in a toy store. He just couldn't believe that a store would have such diversity in, well, everything. That he could choose from so many different fruits, vegetables, even toothpaste. In Germany, most places only carry one brand of toothpaste etc. and only common produce, no avocados, pineapples etc. Just apples, bananas, and strawberries. To be fair though, their strawberries are to die for. The only thing we didn't have much diversity with was, naturally, sausage. I went to England when I was younger with my family. My parents were in a store and my mom asked my dad if he wanted a fanny pack. Now apparently, in Britain fanny means something else than it does in America. Basically, the entire store looked at my parents and one guy said take it outside. I was too young to understand at that point, but now I realize what happened. Fanny means vagina if I'm not mistaken. I found British signs to be much more directly worded than in North America. Crossing on the ferry from Dover to Calais, there's a big sign to the ship in Dover, which of course makes perfect sense, except in NA the sign would be phrased as vessel departure or something else way more wordy. From a park in London, do not throw rubbish on the ground. Rubbish is unsightly and will not be tolerated. In this case it's wordy but super direct, in stark contrast to the litter not signs in my local parks that, in comparison, seem afraid to ask you not to litter, and the toilets are labeled toilet, gasp, as opposed to washroom or restroom signs which seem like they're trying not to spoil their readers for what's actually inside the room. I think the signs at Dover are like that for people who don't have English as their first language. I just spent a few days in London. Movies TV had led me to believe that the food would be awful. Not true. Bangers and mash FTW. Good surprises. 1. The food is delicious. 2. Pret is by a hidden gem. 3. Beautiful gardens. 4. Stunning architecture. I guess that's what happens when a majority of your buildings are old enough by American standards. Almost every building is pretty. 5. The accents never get old no matter which type. 6. You'll dress fancy. It's a nice change. 7. You'll might be a little standoffish when sober, but it's a completely different story once you've got a few drinks in you. 8. The positives outweigh the negatives. I love it there. Bad surprises. 1. So many people smoking, especially at the front doors of buildings, so you have to walk through the fumes to get inside. 2. How thoroughly you get frisked before entering a club. 3. How early everything closes at night. 4. You'll really like heaters. It was boiling inside every building in the tube in October. 5. It's actually as cloudy as they say. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I still was. How much crap your police put up with while watching a CCTV program with police dealing with drunks, protesters, and thieves being aggressive and threatening. Most of those people would have been eating pavement or looking down the barrel of a gun in the first 20 seconds in North America. This is a very, very good thing. Yank married to a Brit here. Been living in England for 1.5 years. Here is my list of things. It's hard to find solid deodorant here. It's all spray or roll on. I mentioned this to my English co-workers, and they looked at me funny. One girl pulled her roll on out of her purse and said, "But this is a stick." I mean, it's stick-like. It's puzzling, because in a cold, wet country, why would you want to put even colder, wetter substances on your pits? Now whenever I go back to the US, I smuggle a bunch of solid deodorant back with me. Many stoves here, cookers, don't have temperature markings on the oven dial, but gas marks. From 1 to 10, it's hard enough converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius, but the gas mark just makes it insane. How many degrees Celsius is gas mark 4 or 7 or whatever? Well, it varies by maker. You just have to buy an oven thermometer, or take a wild guess. Cookies, biscuits, are much better here than in the US. They have an insanely advanced cookie culture, but don't call them cookies. Just don't. And don't talk about how delicious biscuits and gravy is. Tea is a deadly serious business here. Don't ever microwave a cup of water and then put a tea bag into it, unless you like being glared at like you just molested their dog or something. There are no electrical outlets in bathrooms, for the most part. This is because English electricity is 220 or 240 volts, while American is between 110 and 120, so they do not frick around with electricity. Outlets have switches, so you have to plug something in and turn the switch on. English plugs are huge, and many have fuses inside them in case of failure surge. And these plugs are freaking horribly designed. They have NASA level tolerances, so pushing them and pulling them out is a struggle. There are grip divots on some plugs, but they're a micron deep and I'm pretty sure are meant as some kind of a joke. Lots of bathrooms have lights that turn on by pulling a long string that goes up into the ceiling. And bathrooms in public places like Starbucks have a regular string for the lights, and a separate red string which summons people to the bathroom in case of emergency. I found this out when my bestie came to visit. We were in a London Starbucks. I told her about the light string. She pulled it when she went in, but was in there a long time and the light went off. It was on a motion detection switch as well. She reached around blindly and pulled the red string by mistake. The light stayed off. but suddenly people were hammering on the bathroom door yelling, "Oh, you alright in there?" It doesn't seem that the British travel around their own country very much. I dated a woman from the London area and told her how much I loved the Lake District when I visited the UK. She said she had never been there, which seemed almost impossible to me. That's like living in California, but you've never seen the beach. Not quite. The Lake District is a good 4 or 5 hours from London, and is hard to get to on the train. The only opinion is to drive, really, and a lot of Londoners don't have a car. How friendly y'all are. I kind of assumed that most Brits were going to be reserved or stoic compared to Americans, particularly here in Texas. Instead, I found that everyone I encountered was incredibly warm and chatty, definitely going back once the dollar rises more against the pound. Stick deodorant is like impossible to find. Your trains are obnoxiously expensive. Your bus system, while expensive, is quite good about showing up on time. The drinking culture was quite a shock. Most of you lot would be in jail for drunk and disorderly in the States. The dead silence on the bus was a bit unsettling at first. Eating out going out is insanely expensive. A common misconception is that the English are quite polite, but then you learn what people are really saying. And when you hear what people are really saying versus the words that are physically coming out of their mouth, you realize many people can be quite rude. Most of you lot would be in jail for drunk and disorderly in the States. What can I say? Living in freedom is great. How much more polite wait staff and cashiers were when they realized I was Canadian and not American. It was like night and day. I once heard that from anywhere in England, the ocean is never more than 70 miles away. I'm a Pittsburgh boy, born and bred, and I've only been to the ocean once, and I was too young to remember it. It seems like it would be great to be able to make a day trip to the ocean. One difference to remember when comparing distances in the US versus UK or anywhere in Europe: really the US was built up with cars in mind, Europe was not. There are very few roads that go straight from A to B, there's a lot of things to drive around to get anywhere. So 70 miles may not be much in the US, but it can take a long time to travel that in the UK. As an American, it blows my mind how much Great Britain is in our history books, when at the same time America is such a small portion of British history. We can have a week of curriculum on the Boston Tea Party, but I bet in a British classroom you don't spend more than 5 minutes talking about it, if at all. Driving is 1000x better in the UK than in the USA. My road trip there was unforgettable. Roundabouts would never work in the States. Too many bad driving buttholes. When I originally visited, it was the cars. On average, your cars are much nicer than the two countries I've lived in, USA and AUS. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.